Have you ever noticed how, like, the same words can totally have different meanings just from, like, how you say them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're going, like, deep diving into that today.
Uh-huh.
All about intonation
I love it.
with understanding English intonation
Okay.
as our guide. And, like,
Great.
think about this.
Yeah.
Just by changing your tone, you can make the question,
Right.
do you need some help?
Okay.
Go from sincere to sarcastic.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Totally.
It's great.
It's true. Intonation is like a secret code that we use to layer meaning on top of our words.
Ooh, I like that.
So yeah, today we'll kind of uncover how rising and falling tones in particular can completely change what we're trying to communicate.
Okay, let's unpack this. I'm ready to crack the code.
Okay, well, first you need to know the basic intonation patterns.
All right.
Rising, falling.
Okay.
Rising, falling, and falling, rising.
Okay.
Let's take the word where.
Okay.
Okay, imagine asking where. With a rising tone, you sound curious, right?
Yeah.
But with a falling tone, where? It sounds more like you're confirming a location.
Oh,
It's a subtle difference, but it changes the whole meaning.
that's incredible. So even single words can carry a lot of weight depending on the intonation.
Exactly, and it's not just single words.
Okay.
One of the most basic rules is that a falling tone at the end of a sentence signals finality.
Yeah.
It's like saying, okay, I'm done with my thought.
Right.
But a rising tone suggests there's more to come.
Like when you say, I went to the store, that feels complete. But if you say, I went to the store, but with that rising tone, you know there's more to the story.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Intonation can also signal whether information is new or old.
Okay.
The source uses this hilarious dialogue about getting bread to illustrate this point.
Ooh, I remember that one. It totally highlights how the same word bread can have different intonations depending on the context.
Right in the dialogue, someone asks, did you get some bread?
Uh-huh.
The other person replies, I thought you were going to get the bread.
Yeah.
Notice how bread rises, because I already mentioned it's old information.
Oh.
But later they say, how are we going to make sandwiches if we don't have any bread?
Right.
Now bread falls because it's new information related to the sandwiches.
It's like the intonation is guiding the listener, letting them know which information is important and how it connects to what's being said.
Exactly. Have you ever noticed this in your own conversations?
Mm-hmm.
Think about how you might emphasize different words depending on whether you're introducing a new topic or referring back to something already discussed.
Now that you mention it, I think I do.
Oh.
It's amazing how much we do this subconsciously.
Yeah.
But moving on, let's talk about questions.
Okay.
The way we ask a question can completely change its meaning, right?
Absolutely. A question with a falling tone like, where did you go for your vacation? Seeks new information.
Yeah.
You're expecting a detailed answer.
Right.
But a question with a rising tone is often used to confirm or check information.
So if you follow up with, is that in Croatia? You're not asking for a full explanation. You're just confirming what you think you already know.
Exactly. It's subtle, but it makes a big difference in how the question is perceived.
Right.
Now, here's something else to consider. Even a simple question, like, where did you go for your vacation, can sound like a reminder if you ask it with a rising tone. It's almost as if you're saying, didn't we already talk about this?
That's so true. It's like intonation adds a whole extra layer of meaning.
Yeah.
It's not just about the words themselves, it's about the intention behind them.
That's a great way to put it. And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of questions.
Okay.
They're not always about seeking information.
What?
Sometimes they're disguised statements or subtle commands.
Wait, what? Tell me more about that.
Think about it.
Okay.
You can use a question with a falling tone to make a comment like, wasn't it great?
Okay.
Or use a rising tone to criticize like, are you insane?
Oh.
You can even make suggestions with questions. Why don't we get something to eat? With a falling tone sounds like a confident proposal, while a rising tone might make it sound more hesitant.
So it's like we're bending the rules of grammar, using questions to do all sorts of things besides just asking for information.
Precisely. And intonation is the key to understanding these subtle nuances.
Wow.
Let's take a closer look at suggestions, for instance. Imagine someone saying, how about we just go home?
Okay.
If they say it with a rising tone, it sounds tentative, like they're feeling things out.
Right.
But with a falling tone, it becomes more direct, like they've already made up their mind.
It's amazing how much power a simple shift in tone can have. And speaking of powerful shifts, let's move on to how intonation can convey emotions.
Okay, so are you ready to hear these?
Yeah, bring them on.
All right, get ready to listen closely. Here's did you, said 5 different ways.
I'm all ears. Let's see if I can crack the emotional code.
Okay, here's the first one. Did you?
That just sounds like a normal question, like you're really asking me if I did something.
Exactly. Now listen to this one. Did you?
Ooh, okay, that's a little different. I hear, like, maybe you don't believe me or you're kind of, like, judging me a little bit.
Yeah, you got it spot on.
Okay.
Okay, here's the next variation. Did you?
That one sounds like you're worried about me. Like, did you really do that? Are you okay?
Precisely, the intonation suggests concern. Are you ready for number 4?
Hit me with it.
Did you?
That sounds super exciting. Like, you're really happy for me that I did whatever it was that I did.
You're on a roll. Last but not least, did you?
That's a tough one. But I think maybe you're a little disappointed in me. Like, did you really have to do that?
Precisely. It's remarkable how much emotion those 2 little words can carry just by changing the intonation.
Wow. Yeah, it really is. I'm starting to realize how much we communicate without even realizing it. It makes me wonder, is this just an English thing, or do other languages use intonation in similar ways?
That's a great question. Actually, the source asks listeners to consider if intonation in their native language is similar to English or different.
I'm guessing even if the specific patterns are different, the idea of using tone to convey meaning and emotion, that's got to be universal, right?
Yeah, that's a fascinating point. Intonation seems to tap into a deeper level of human communication that goes beyond just the words themselves. It's about expressing our feelings, our intentions, and even our relationships with others.
Yeah, and it makes me think about how many times I might have like totally misunderstood someone just because I didn't pick up on those little changes in their tone, or maybe times when I accidentally conveyed the wrong message because I wasn't really aware of my own tone.
That's a common experience.
Yeah.
But now that you're aware of intonation, you can start listening for those subtle shifts, and hopefully you can avoid those kinds of misunderstandings.
So understanding intonation isn't just about becoming a better listener. It's about becoming a better communicator overall. And we can actually use this knowledge to express ourselves more clearly and connect with others on a deeper level.
Exactly. We often get so caught up in the words themselves that we forget about the power of our voice to shape the message. But intonation can make all the difference in how our words are perceived and understood.
It's like we've been given a secret decoder ring for human communication.
That's a great analogy, and that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. It's giving you the tools to understand the nuances of language and hopefully become a more effective communicator.
So to wrap up this section, let's just recap the key takeaways about intonation. What are the most important things we've learned so far?
Well, first and foremost, we've seen how intonation can completely change the meaning of a sentence. Like one simple phrase said with different intonations can convey a whole range of emotions.
Right, and we've also learned how intonation helps signal new versus old information, guiding the listener through a conversation and highlighting what's most important.
And we explored how intonation can transform questions into statements, criticisms, or even suggestions, adding layers of meaning that go beyond the words themselves.
It's like intonation gives us a secret language that we use to express ourselves more fully and connect with others on a deeper level.
Exactly. And now that you're aware of this secret language, how might you start paying more attention to it, both in your own speech and in how others speak?
That's a great question. I think I'm already starting to notice those tiny changes in tone in everyday conversations. It's like I've been missing this whole other layer of communication.
And as you continue to pay attention, you'll become more and more attuned to those nuances, making you a more perceptive listener and a more effective communicator.
It's so cool how this deep dive is making me more mindful of not just what I say, but how I say it. It's really empowering. But before we wrap up completely, what's that final thought you want to leave our listener with today?
I think one of the most interesting takeaways for me is that intonation is almost like a secret weapon for effective communication.
Yeah.
It's something that like everybody can use to be more clear, more engaging, more persuasive in everyday life.
It's true. And the coolest thing is like the more you pay attention to intonation, the more you notice it. Yeah.
And so then you start to see those patterns in your own speech.
Exactly.
And even in like how other people talk to you, and it's like working out a muscle.
Totally.
It could be a little tough at first,
Yeah.
but it's so worth it.
Uh-huh.
And now that we're talking about it, I can already feel myself
Right.
like being more confident in how I can express myself and how I connect with other people.
And that's exactly it. Understanding intonation, it's not just about like having the knowledge.
Right.
It's about actually using that knowledge to become like a much better communicator. It's about fine-tuning your instrument to create exactly the effect that you want in a certain situation.
I like that. Okay, so like what are some practical tips that our listener can use to like start using this in their own life?
Well, first and foremost, I would say just like become more aware of how you're using intonation.
Okay.
Record yourself talking and like listen back to it.
Yeah.
Pay attention to how your tone changes depending on what you're talking about.
So, do you use a lot of rising tones or falling tones? What kind of emotions are you communicating with your voice?
It's true. It's like looking in a mirror at how you talk to people.
Exactly.
And then once you see your own patterns, then you can play around with different ways of using intonation and see how it changes what you're saying.
Totally. Try like emphasizing different words in a sentence or changing the pitch of your voice just to kind of see how it shifts the meaning.
Yeah.
Practice using rising tones to sound curious or skeptical,
Uh,
or falling tones to sound more confident or like you're finished making your point.
and don't forget about pauses.
Oh, yeah,
Pauses are so powerful.
they are.
Like a well-placed pause just makes what you're saying stand out.
Absolutely. Pauses are like the punctuation in spoken language.
Yeah,
They add all the details and they make things so much clearer.
it's true. And you know what else? I was just thinking about how important it is to pay attention to other people's intonation too.
Oh, for sure.
It's not just about what they're saying, but it's about how they're saying it.
Yeah. And by listening to how other people are talking, we can pick up on those little clues about how they're feeling or what they really mean,
Yeah.
or even like what their attitude is.
It's like we're unlocking a secret code to figure out what their real message is.
I love that analogy.
And that's so helpful in any situation, whether it's with your family or friends or even when you're at work.
Absolutely. It can even help you navigate those awkward social situations. Like if somebody says, "That's interesting,"
Right.
but they say it in like a really flat tone.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not actually interested.
Exactly. It's all about paying attention to those clues and thinking about what else is going on around you.
Right. So the next time you're having a conversation, just try to tune into those subtle shifts in tone.
Yeah.
You might be really surprised at what you notice.
For sure. This whole deep dive has made me see communication in a whole new light.
I'm so glad.
I can't wait to keep learning more about it.
Awesome. And I'm sure you'll love what you find. Intonation is so fascinating and it's complex. But if you keep practicing and paying attention, you can really use it to become a much better communicator.
So true. And for everyone listening, if you want to go deeper into this topic, check out Understanding English Intonation.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource that will give you way more insights and techniques.
It's a great book. And just remember, communication is an art. And like with any art form, it takes practice and a willingness to keep learning and keep growing.
Absolutely. So keep those ears open, those minds curious, and those voices expressive.
Yes. And thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We hope you enjoyed exploring the awesome world of intonation.
Until next time, happy communicating.